we can start making adjustments using the Google Chrome inspector. Now those are not going to be permanent changes, but they are ones where we could kind of just see what's going on in real time, which is great. And the other thing that's nice about it is that there's no commitment. You don't have to sit there and save stuff. And then if we like what we do, we can copy it and paste it into our Komodo edit HTML and CSS. Okay, so if you come over here, I want to really quickly show you. This is kind of the way that I'm envisioning this ending up. All right, so it's a sort of a long way from this. So to get some sense of what we're going to do, let's just start with some really basic things that you should do first. I'm going to right click and inspect anywhere on the page. It doesn't really matter. And then you see you get this inspector. Yours might show up on the right side. Just remember that you can always choose to either undock it and move it around like this, or you can go ahead and dock it again. And if you click and hold and you want to make it go on the right side, you can do that. So you could make it go up there. But I'm going to keep mine on the bottom for now. Oops, I need to redock it and click and hold and put it on the bottom. There we go. What I'm looking for in here is actually the body. So if I click on the body, you see what it does automatically is it shows me the properties over here on the right side that are correlating in CSS. And if you notice, this thing that I just highlighted over here, the properties that are in CSS are in fact matching what's actually in the file. So it's showing you the styles that are currently being rendered for anything that we happen to select over here in this HTML side. The other thing you'll notice is that as I hover over these different parts of the document, you might notice, here let's scroll up a little bit, you might notice that it's in blue, it starts to highlight, like for instance it's highlighting nav, now the UL, and now the LI, and so forth. If we were to drop this down in the A, and so what's really nice is that that will show you exactly how much space is being taken up. If we scroll over here and I look down at the bottom under where it says styles here, in Google Chrome, anything that's blue is the actual space that the element itself is taking up. Anything that's sort of rendered out in green is the padding on that element. Anything that's in this sort of yellowy color is the border. Anything that's in this orange color is a margin, okay? And then it gives you some sense of the actual space that things are taking up. It's very, very helpful, especially for troubleshooting. So if we look at nav, nav is all in blue right there. And you'll notice that it's sort of bumped up right here. If you look right here, it's bumped off the side, for instance. And I'll explain what's going on there. And the other thing too is if I were to hover over this article, it's the same thing. It's bumped off to the left side of the browser edge. Same with section. Okay, same with pretty much everything. And what's happening there that'll help me understand is on body, if I also hover body, you see that body is also bumped off the edge for just a little bit. And what's happening is that it's applying a margin to the body and the default browser style sheet. So we need to undo some stuff that the default style sheet for the browser is doing in the absence of other styles. So if I go ahead and select body on the left here, and then one of the things that I can do is I can add to the body just by clicking down below background. All right, that's one option. And then what I can start to type is the word margin, and you see it starts to autocomplete help, just like it does kind of in Komodo Edit. And so I could select it by clicking on it. I could also arrow down and hit enter. So if I say margin and then I hit the colon key and then I say 0, you see what it does is it puts it right up against the edge of the browser window, which is exactly what we want. Because we want to get rid of that extra margin, and then we'll intentionally give other things margins later. Okay. The other thing is that, you know, maybe we can see what happens if we want to change the color of all the text on the page. Let's just do that really quickly. And color is the actual name of the property for text color. And let's just say that we're going to do like a pound symbol we're going to do a hexadecimal number, so pound symbol, and let's do 333. That's sort of like a dark gray. And you see that it changed a little bit, okay? And I just want to show you a couple of things. One thing that you'll notice is that the link color did not change. And that tells me immediately that links are treated differently than normal text, okay? And we'll get to links later, but I do want you to notice that links are treated differently than normal text. And you see though that the bullets here are still dark. They're like that dark gray, they're not blue. That's because that's being rendered for the list item, whereas this about me, my goals, miscellaneous stuff, those are all the actual links, the A tags, okay? The other thing that we can do too is we can do something with the font. Right now it's just, I think, doing like regular Times New Roman as a default. And I'm going to show you something. There are some different ways you can do font. We're going to jump over to a website called CSS Tricks. It's a great website. And I'm going to recommend that you check this out. So if you were to go to css-tricks.com and then you just do a search for the word font, it would come right up, or you can just use this URL that's here. So if I go down, it explains everything about the font property in CSS, and it explains how it's got some special rules. Now, what you can do with font, it's a shorthand property that encompasses all of the things like font stretch, font style, font variant, font weight. These are all things that in longhand could be set. And these are the possible values down here. So it gives you some different things that you can play with, and it also explains what that particular property does. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you're more than welcome to look at this page. Then you could start to experiment with this yourself. So it also gives you some font shorthand gotchas. All right, and it explains that, for instance, font family always has to be listed at the very end of the shorthand. What does all this mean? Let's just go to the very top, okay? And let's just stop talking about it for a second, and let's just do something with it. I'm going to copy this example that's on this page. Let's copy that, and we're going to paste it directly into our inspector, okay, like that. And you see what it's doing is it's saying that the first position is normal text, so that means that anything that was trying to render out as bold, like an H1 or an H2, is now rendering out as normal. Also, it's using a font variant, which is small caps. You see that everything is doing an initial large cap, and then all the rest of the letters in every word are small caps. Well, I don't want that on everything. I might actually like that on some things, but not everything. We'll deal with that in just a minute. And then again, it's normal. I can get rid of that again. And then what this is, and he explains that in the page that I was just showing you, is that it's saying that the size, the font size is 16 pixels, and then forward slash, and then the line height. So it's saying, all right, this is the line height, and this is 16 pixels is the actual font size. And then at the very end, it's got the name of the font family. Okay, so let's get rid, for a second, let's get rid of small caps, and I'm going to get rid of normal that is duplicated, and I'm going to be fine with this. Okay, and one thing that is also useful to know is that you can measure fonts in different units of measure. You can measure them in pixels, you can measure them in ems, like EM. You can measure them in percentages. A really standard way to do typography in web is with ems, and 1 em approximates 16 pixels. So I'm going to change this where it says 16 pixels. I could leave that at 16 for the base for the whole body, or I could change it to 1em. So if I change this to 1em, you see that it's roughly the same. All right, and then the line height, if I wanted the line height to be a little bit different, I could change that as well. And you'll notice that in ems, 1em is roughly 16 pixels. Also, it is also approximately 100% of the base font size. So, and that gets a little confusing because percentages are typically relative based on something on the page. But when it comes to fonts, just stick with ems, or you could stick with pixels, but it's better to stick with ems. And for the line height, I might want to see what it does if I were to go, instead of 1.5 1.4. Let's see what 1.5 does. And it spreads it out just a little bit more. No, that's fine. So we'll leave it at that for the body. Okay, and so this gives you an idea of how you can start to muck around and look at it. However, though, if I were to accidentally refresh this page or click any of these links, I would completely lose everything that I just did. So that's really important to know. Also, like, you got to be careful if you're on a laptop where it has gestures left and right to swipe to go to the back page or the next page. You have to be careful because you can lose everything that way too, and there's no way of getting it back unless you just retype everything. So you might want to do something where you take a progressive stance and you go up and you copy the stuff and then you paste it into your real actual document and save it progressively. So what I'm going to also do is I want to get rid of this yellow background. This is kind of hideous for right now. Let's do something that was just to illustrate something very obvious. Instead of FFF, which is white, let's try EEE, which is an off-white, like that. And so one of the things about FFF is that it can be bad for people who have seizures because of the way that the refresh rate goes. So sometimes it's nice to just do something that's slightly off-white. And you can also do like EF, 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 okay? Now to copy this, I could just copy it straight from here, or I can click where it says styles right here. I can click there, and then it takes me to the actual style sheet. And you see it jumped right here to sources. We were in elements. Now if I go back to sources, you can see that I'm looking at the modified style sheet for this particular page. If I want to take all of this stuff and copy it, I can go over into my real file and I can paste it there. Okay, and so now I've got a good starting place. And this is going to be kind of helpful. And the other thing too about Georgia is if you don't want Georgia, if you want something that's a sans serif or something else, I want to show you, you can go to something called typetester.org. So it's typetester.org. And what Typetester allows you to do, which is very cool, is it allows you to do testing on fonts. Here, let's open this up a little bit. So it allows you to compare fonts. The other thing that it'll show you right off the bat, if you click this drop down, is it shows you what web-safe fonts are available. And then it has a horizontal rule to separate it from the next set, which is Google Fonts. Web-safe fonts, what that means is that these are the fonts that are safe for any computers. They're going to be on any of those by default. And the thing that you need to know about web stuff is that you can't just tell it to use any font that might happen to be in your computer. Let's say that, you know, we're designers, and so the chances are that you've got a lot more fonts than the average bear. And so you don't want to use something that's a fancy font that somebody else might not have, because then it won't show up on their screen. And what it'll do is it'll substitute something that you're not expecting. So we're not going to get into Google Fonts and other stuff right now. Let's just stick right now for the web-safe fonts. I actually happen to like Georgia, but you could come and change any of these, like especially later if you want to make your headings with impact or something, or Arial Black, something that's kind of a little different looking. Let's say that you wanted to just look and see what that would look like. And we could change this from, and we can do it right here. We don't have to go back into the elements. I could change this to Arial like that, and you see right off the bat that it changed it for me to Arial. Now, I'm going to undo that because I liked it as Georgia. The other thing is that you still want to do a fallback font just in case. So if I say Georgia, I would want to do comma serif, S-E-R-I-F. A serif font is, well, Georgia is a serif font. Arial, for instance, is a sans serif. So if you were to do something like Arial, we could do Arial, comma, and then sans dash serif. Okay, and that's referred to as a fallback font. And you can have as many fonts listed here as you want. The only thing is that if it has two words in the font, for instance, like Courier New, you would need to put that in quotation marks like this with comma in between. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to using my Georgia font, the serif. And I think I'm going to go ahead and stop right here, and we'll move on to the next video.